I've been saying for at least the last 10 years that the best Superman movie out there is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. For at least 20 years, Superman has been dark, mopey, depressing, morally adrift. Does this movie fix that? What's up, WWE Champions Universe? This is Lee from Champions Chat, and this is my review of Superman 2025. I even said it in a sermon recently, but this idea that Captain America the Winter Soldier is the best version of Superman is the best argument and framework that I have to understanding why I loved Superman 2025 so much. What Captain America got right, that most Superman properties, even TV and movies, have been so lost on, is that Superman is the moral center of the movie. With Captain America, the Winter Soldier, they went out of their way to show a man who's out of time, meaning he's of a different era. And to everyone else around him, Captain America's moral center, his beliefs, they just seemed so out of touch. And everybody tells him this, right? You're out of touch. You don't understand the modern world. And yet, as the movie progresses, you see more and more just how right Captain America is, until at the end of the movie, you have everybody recognizing that even though his moral compass seems set to a different era, Captain America is absolutely the one who is in the right in this situation. And that's where Superman has failed as a movie franchise for about the last 20 years. Now, I grew up with George Reeves' version of Superman on Nick at Night, where Superman kind of hadn't really fully developed himself. It was a guy who was kind of muscular, kind of not, in a suit. But even then, Superman stood for your truth, your justice, the brighter tomorrow, American way, whichever you want to say. And, they did things where Superman was endorsing, the anti-smoking campaigns, all these different things that made Superman the moral center. Then, Smallville, I love Smallville, minus the Nexium scandals with Allison Mack and all that. But, great documentary, by the way, on that. But Smallville really kind of caught the era of this questioning who you are, wondering where you belong in the universe. And it fit that show. But that kind of continued and got aggressively worse as you got into some of the other movies. I love Brandon Routh. I thought he was a great Superman, but the movie failed him quite a lot, actually. It tried to do some classic callbacks, but overall, the aesthetic of the movie was dark. The Superman's kind of a stalker sort of character. He's given up on humanity. He walks away for 5 years, and then when he comes back, there's this piece like, do we even need a Superman? And I think that right there, that line, is the perfect encapsulation of this last 20 years. Do we even need a Superman? It really throws us right back into the Captain America Winter Soldier situation, minus all the deep state espionage, maybe, and other things like that. The question people have asked is, do we even need to be moral as human beings? Go into Superman 2025. This movie is unabashedly bright. The color palette reverses everything Zack Snyder did. Like, I love Henry Cavill as Superman. I thought he did an amazing job. But the dark and depressing color palette, the Superman who's mopey all the time, just the choices Zack Snyder made. I loved some of the things. Like, the Snyder Cut was super fun, but they were obviously building towards a Superman who is the dark force, the turned good that becomes the deep evil, misguided evil, I should say, in the world. You could see that from the Snyder Cut of where they were going. And obviously, you had Joss Whedon interrupt that kind of try to bring Superman back to the moral center, the jokey, ness he had with the kids. The colors were a little bit brighter, but it wasn't something that was owned. It was something that was forced from one creative vision onto another. This one is a solid, unified creative vision. James Gunn does a great job. I'm pretty sure this is my favorite James Gunn movie by far, and I really liked the Guardians trilogy. I've liked some of his other things, but this really outdoes those, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the real focus for it is the fact that it is unashamedly nerdy. Like, there's a moment in there where Superman goes, golly gosh, and you're just like, oh, that is so 1950s. But that hits on what made Captain America, Winter Soldier, the best Superman movie, is like, he's this man out of time. He's out of place around everyone around him, even some of the ones that he loves the most. And they really do a great job of showing that real disconnect and difference between Lois and Clark, Clark as Superman, Kal-El in that sense. And it's just this really unashamed take on Superman's nerdiness. They go unashamed with the underwear outside the tights. The color palette is bright, even more so than most any other Superman I've seen. I saw New Rockstars compare it to Spider-Man 2, and I think that is probably the best comparison, is how Superman says things and you're like, oh, but you love him for it. You love what they're doing with it. And really it boils down to this one line. Lois and Clark are talking to each other, and they're actually talking about music preferences, right? And Superman says something about loving the PODs. I don't know if that's like, we are, the youth of the nation, POD, because the other two bands are not real. I don't know if James Gunn just subtly threw this huge shout to the band POD, which would be awesome because I like those guys. But what they say in this is how Clark actually grows up listening to punk rock music. And as he starts to explain things more and more to Lois, he has this line that essentially is encapsulated in being moral is the new punk rock. So go back to Brandon Routh's Superman. The question was, does the world even need a Superman? And in this movie, the answer is absolutely yes. We've had so many fallen heroes. We've had so many false saviors. We have, oh my gosh, Lex Luthor in this. I mean, just Beast from X-Men. Yeah, he plays such a good villain. I mean, this is literally what, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, I've heard for years people say, Obama or George Bush or, keep on going on and on, Biden, Trump, whoever, that these guys are this dark, shadowy figure, and you kind of have that in there where they secretly kind of rule the world behind the scenes. Nicholas Hoult does this great job of playing this fragile ego, but who's also this super genius that is running the world behind the scenes. It has what people claim for Elon Musk, for Mark Zuckerberg. It just brings all of these elements into this one person, where you can see clearly the world we live in, we don't trust anymore. And in this movie, Luthor gets everyone to not trust Superman. They put all of the energy that their, conspiracy theories, their hatred, their distrust, their just mundane life, they put it all onto Superman. And you start to see that, this great moment where the guy throws a can at Superman's head and it hits him, and if you watch the old trailers, he blinks, and then there was this big, how dare Superman blink when he gets hit in the head with a can, because he doesn't feel nuclear missiles. How's he going to feel that? Whatever. My son actually made me watch both trailers multiple times just to see, does he blink or does he not blink? And then, anyway. But the argument at the center of the movie is the new punk rock is to be that shining moral center. The new punk rock is to be the one who stands up for what is right. The new punk rock is to be unashamedly nerdy, unashamedly owning who you are with this deep sense of morals and justice. And it works. It is so very of the moment right now. This is what Superman should have always been, and he lost that. He lost track of that. Instead of being the moral center, Superman became just another mopey guy that has powers beyond any other superhero. Hooray. But he doesn't use them for anything. This Superman has a message. In fact, it all kind of comes down to this moment with Lex, and I don't want to ruin the movie, so skip ahead by like 35 seconds if you want to. But he has this big discussion about how Lex sees him as a god. And he says, no, my greatest strength is I'm a human. I'm flawed. And I've always said that. To me, Superman has always been the most relatable superhero there is, where, controversial take, I get it, Batman is by far the least. Batman, and by extension, really Tony Stark, and what I love the MCU, but what the MCU has built itself on, this ultra-rich, ultra-snarky, super cool personality that everyone loves, everyone wants to be. That's your Batman, that's your Iron Man from 2008 on. And what Superman was always supposed to be is the one that stands out. The one that says, even if they go that way, I'm staying here. There's this great speech in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, where he talks about, like, even if everyone else around you is saying you should go in the wrong direction, you plant yourself like a tree and you stand against the tide and you look them in the eyes and you say, no, you move. That is what this Superman does. He says, my greatest strength is not that I have great powers far beyond mortal men. My greatest strength is I'm the most human out of all of you. I'm the one who, I can't be hurt, but I can be hurt by those around me. I can feel the pain of those around me. And where I am invincible, they are so vulnerable. And I go out of my way to protect them. My favorite Superman moment up to this movie is actually in the DCAU, the DC Animated Universe. And at the very end of Justice League Unlimited, the last series that they did, Superman's fighting Darkseid. Darkseid is the ultimate envisioning of this corrupting evil that has gotten its way into the world. It's taken over people's minds. It's sin, right? He's the embodiment of what sin does in our lives. And Superman starts fighting him. And he has this moment where he's like, finally, I live in a world where everything is paper. And if you think about Superman's strength, literally, like everything around him, he has to be careful, because where you and I could touch a wall, he could, just easily touch through it like it's nothing, right? He could destroy cities with a thought hardly, by barely moving. And so everything around him is this fragile paper. And so he finally unleashes himself on Darkseid physically, right? But in this, he doesn't unleash himself physically. He does against the Ultraman character. It's a good fight and all that. There's lots of action. But it's more where Lex comes at everything this, I can win with my brain, I can win with my intelligence and my knowledge. Superman comes at it as, I have won because I live from my heart. I live for those around me. I live for what's right and what is true. And because of that, I'm the one who's right, even if the whole world sees me as wrong. And that just makes a beautiful movie. So where would I rank Superman 2025? I would say it's my favorite Superman movie. I don't know if it beats Captain America the Winter Soldier, but if you're going to be a purist and say that's not a Superman movie because it's Steve Rogers, okay, fair. In terms of all superhero movies, I mean, it's up there for sure. I've just seen it the once, and so I don't have a pure, long enough take to say, oh, I've thought about this for weeks, months, and I think it is better than. But I would say safely, and I'm, again, not knocking the MCU. I love the MCU. My favorite movies. But I would say 75% of the MCU movies are easily not as good as this one. And that means it's in the top 25%, which, you're talking Avengers Endgame, you're talking Captain America the Winter Soldier, you're talking the original Captain Marvel, not the second one as much. I don't know what happened right there. You're talking Thor Ragnarok levels. I mean, it is definitely up there with some of my favorite MCU movies. But where it shines above, and the reason why I've said it too many times this video, Captain America the Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU movie, even above your Endgames and, your big spectacles. Why that and Spider-Man, pretty much, the Tom Holland and the Tobey Maguire movies have held such a special place in my heart, is because those characters are not afraid to be right. Not like I'm right, you're wrong, but like in the right. The ones who are on the moral compass where everyone else's compass has gone adrift. And they're not afraid to be wrong until finally they end up being proven right. So my one takeaway from Superman, being moral is the new punk rock. And I love that message. It's one that I hope this world, this generation hears loud and clear. Plus, it's just a fun popcorn spectacle movie where he fights monsters and uses superpowers, right? It's great. So that is my review of Superman 2025. Did you see it? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments section. And are you okay with the fact that I am not doing WWE Champions stuff with this video? Is that all right? We good? We good? Share this with your friends and family because I think they should see the movie. I think everyone should see this. I really hope this movie does very, very well because my guess, if it does, we're going to see a new trend come of this. We're going to see a generation of superhero movies that return, like X-Men. I think X-Men is the dividing point on this last topic here real quick. But in the original X-Men movie, you had that moment between Wolverine and Cyclops, Cyclops is horrible. He's always the worst. Anyway, where, Wolverine puts on the leather and he's like, oh, what is this? And Cyclops is like, what did you expect? Yellow spandex? And then in X-Men 97, how they completely reverse that course. And I think it's Robert Acosta and Cyclops again. And then Cyclops gets to be the Wolverine character, which I disagree with. Cyclops is a punk. And so, he's like, oh, what's all this like flashy, costume and stuff? He's like, what did you expect? Dark leather, right? Like that's where we are. We have made the shift from, superhero movies trying to be a version of cool that was never actually as cool as they thought it was to a version of authenticity and nerdiness that I think our generation has embraced. I think the embracing of just the differences we have is what this is moving towards. And yet, being moral is the new punk rock. So embracing the diversity, but finding that strong moral core that makes people actually look up to the skies and have hope. That's always what Superman was supposed to be. So that's all I got for this one, guys. Let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to Champions Chat, and send this to your friend or faction mates, or just people who really love superhero movies and want to hear my take on it. Bye.